tutorial video. How to draw a... I'm going to follow this simple, very brushes that should be you'd want to use. Clip Studio Paint, airbrush, a soft things, and add too much color, and then we're gonna want hard shadows. To start with a little layer I'd like to work on. So we're gonna start by then over here the color that's just be it a little bit. Make it, of course, dark color in there. A more natural. We're gonna do that. We'll come down towards the red. Any of those, color changes to be super a ton. Anyway, sort of lighting. Little tiny shadow there. Skin color itself is here. Add some little tiny bit down here. We'll make it slightly bright with our color and the light scale. So this will help to our character. The tendons and a little bit to the edges of the neck. And a tiny bit kind of in this nook. And then I'm erasing it. Whenever you see this pop over, this is my eraser. And I'm softening it up towards the top where the shadow is cast. So if you flick on and off your visibility on that layer, you can kind of see where your light is. So from there, we will just get right into the multiply layer. So I'll select my shade color on a multiply layer. That way these shadows will even show differences in color beneath them. And I'm actually gonna keep this line relatively accurate here. Like so. And I'll just fill it. And I do want to keep the same sort of feel as our previous sort of our black skin tutorial. And so I'm going to keep this one with a little bit more exaggerated shadows. Not anything crazy, but a little bit more than what we've been doing before. Then I'm going to soften it up as it fades away from the area in which the shadow is actually cast. Like so. Maybe not that much. And then for the ears, I'm just going to start with the actual shadow itself. I'm going to give relatively generous shadows here in the ear that's kind of lower. And then this little section right here, I still want a shadow, but it's not going to be quite as large. Just because it's up closer to the light itself. So a larger shadow is going to be cast in the little pocket of the ear here, rather than right here by the hair. So we'll do that. Then I'm just going to make a lighter color here for our earlobe. Well, not the earlobe, but the little inside portion of the ear. Just to add a little hint of light, just to kind of break up the same color, but we're not trying to overwork the ears here. From there, we can go on to the face. So what I like to do is I color drop my face color here because it's been untouched. And then down here, I can select the neck, and I can see that this little area over here moved sufficiently, so I know that I selected the actual shadow that we used before. So from there, I'm not going to try to overwork the shading and stuff on the head. We of course want to shade it and render it out, but I've just found that sometimes you can overwork the face and make it a little bit too crowded, and it just kind of loses this sort of simple, sort of cute factor that kind of anime girls tend to have. So we're keeping the face pretty simple here. Then using just the skin color, I'm just gonna soften up some of these shadows, you know, kind of around the eyes and the cheeks. Then I'll re-grab, so again I can make sure to use my skin color, and then I can re-grab right here, so I'm using shadow. And this time, I'm actually going to put a little bit of shadow around the eyes like this. So that way, if I flick on and off our stuff, we can see that the eyes have a little bit of shadow, a little bit of depth to them. Because then in another layer, we will grab a slightly lighter skin color here, and we will add some brightness to our cheeks, a little to the forehead, as well as a little, not a lot, just a little bit to the eyes themselves. So it adds just a little bit of color there. And then we're going to add a little bright spot for the nose. In fact, I'm going to bring these ones down by the cheeks to come down a little bit. And then I'll just use a little eraser tool to kind of blend and erase up towards the top of the head here, like so. And again, as you go, just like with anything, you're going to be constantly rebalancing and messing with the opacity and stuff, so it's okay if it looks a little bit wonky as you're working on it, because the finished product should hopefully look good. So from there, we might as well just get straight into the hard shadows, and then we can work our way back. So I'll grab our shade over here. So up here is pretty dark spot, so I'll just select that. And then keeping in theme with a little bit harder cast shadows, not that hard, but I'm just making sure that these shadows are a bit thicker than what we've seen before, just so there's a little bit more going on here. And then we'll, so at the roots, I also need to fill in some colors here apparently. So I'll just scratch those in like that. There we go. Kind of scratching in the areas that are covered by the roots. And then I won't follow the shadow all the way down to like the cheek, but kind of follow the overall flow of the little sideburn area like that. And then I'll curve this in a little bit more. Kind of bring it back a little bit though. And then from here I kind of want to keep it pointed a little bit better. Gonna add in a little shadow under the nose, a little shadow over here on the ears, like this. And then from there, we'll just soften the areas of the shadow that are furthest from the head. So it's okay if up in here in this area is darker, but we just want to make sure that the shade gets a little bit lighter as it gets closer and closer to like where the sun might be shining down on our character. So from there, what I like to do is add in our blush layer. So for our darker skinned characters, it is helpful to grab kind of whatever color their cheek is, so we can kind of see position where it's actually at over here. And then from that, we can come over here to the red, and then I'm just gonna make this slightly darker and a little bit more deep red. From there, this time instead of just having on the cheeks, we'll kind of do the blush that spreads across like this. So now we've got a little blush line in, and we can see it's a little bit, might be a little bit too dark red, so I'm going to brighten it just a tad. There we go. And then from there, I will lower its opacity. I don't want the blush to be too deep. Our character didn't get done running. We're just trying to add a little flush to the cheeks here. And I'll add a layer and use a very small brush size for my hard shadow. Same color that we just used for the blush, and just kind of scratch in these little anime blush lines. So we'll throw those in. I'm going to lower their opacity a little bit. And then from there, I'll grab a bright portion of the head here, make a super bright little color, and I will add little light spots on our cheeks and nose. And then erase them down a little bit, and there we go. So now we can do the hair. So I'm going to use a slightly different method than what we did before. A lot of it's going to be pretty similar. So we want to pick kind of a decently sized hard shadow brush here, so just a hard airbrush, and kind of add in these little patterns here, and we'll break them up and make them a little bit more interesting in a second, but for right now, just kind of scratch these in. And then what I will do is I'm actually going to go like one step at a time here, just because my hair is on a bunch of different layers, which wasn't really the case in the previous one, so it can help to make sure you actually are using the correct colors to just one step at a time for each layer. So that is what I'm going to do. So I'll do that same thing across all my little layers here, like so. Then we'll come back down. We're not going to add a new layer. We're just going to do this on the layer itself. Just use the original hair color to kind of break up sections of this shadowy area that kind of got too big. Like so. We'll do that on everything that needs it. Like so. Then from there, I'm just gonna use my eraser to soften the ends of these shadows. Like that. And now, we will throw in our new little technique here. So, this is something pretty common that people will do with some of their anime and manga characters here. They'll take a super bright, vibrant sort of color, like this. I've even seen some where they'll just use like a G pen like this, and just block it out like that. I think for us, we will do that, but with this sort of hard shadow. So we'll throw that in like that, and don't worry, we're going to work with it so it actually looks somewhat decent. But for right now, we're just throwing in big old stripes of light. I'm gonna add a little bit of curve to the head here, just so it kind of wraps around. So, and then we will do a smaller one right there. Although, I will take this, like so. So, now what we want to do is use our lasso tool, come down to this original layer, and we're just going to take little bits and pieces, like kind of triangle, sort of boxy shapes, out to kind of break up this overall line. And you can work with it all you want to make it look different. And if you don't like this method of rendering, you don't have to do this style either. I don't really use this method myself personally, but it's good to try new things and to practice, so you can just kind of see how they make this strap here. And then, after I've taken some pieces out, I'm just going to break it up a little bit with my softening eraser. And then I'll do the same up here. Just trying to make kind of interesting shapes and break it up a little bit. Then I like kind of further darkening it out over on the edges, like so. And then for this, we're just gonna erase the sections here that kind of are outside of the light anyways, like this. And then I will break up these shapes here. And I'm gonna try to keep these a little bit of a curved shape so it kind of follows the overall flow of the hair in these sections. And then erase that a little bit, like so. Then I will come back down to here and just kind of break up the sections here that are kind of behind our hair, like that. And then from there, I will make a new layer, make it a little bit darker than our shadows, and make a small hardened airbrush and just add little tiny hair strand lines like this. You don't have to do this. A lot of people will keep the hair relatively simple and smooth. So if this is not really a detail you like in your piece, then you don't have to do it. Then I will erase and soften here in the sections that are drowned out by the light. Like so. Do that same thing up here. And then finally, we will do it right here. Just kind of scratch them in. Then erase. And then the final step here will be a little multiply layer, just using the regular hair color. Oops, gotta make it multiply. There we go. And I'll just kind of trace out some of these shapes here. And then fill this in. the same. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to soften these. Then I'll do that same thing up on my other layer right here. So I'll do this. Just trying to add it where the sun would kind of be blocked out. Like kind of around our ears and stuff. Oops. Okay, I'm messing this line up. And then just kind of right here in this little pocket area. Erase some of this. Then finally do that same thing right here. Like this. Add a little right there. Kind of shade that. Shade this one. Soften. Then finally, for the darker sections of our hair here, I'm just going to take the same multiplied color that we got, and I'll just draw over these sections. So that way they look actually like darkened out. So they look a little bit similar. I'll erase it a little bit though, so it's not as jarring of a dark color. From there, we can add a little multiply layer to our eyebrows. And make these match up. This one's like pretty much just completely covered, it looks like. Soften. From there, we'll come up to our eye. So on our darker characters, I like to make the eye whiteness a little bit darker as well. So instead of 95, I'm at 90. Just so that way it's not as jarring of a splash of brightness, you know. Then we'll multiply. Again, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger of a shadow cast. So it'll kind of come in the middle of our eye here. Soften it a little bit. And now we'll get to the eye. And then from here, we'll just use our little lighting brush. Sort of same principles that we did before. Pick kind of a darker shade to begin with. And we're just doing a gradient, getting darker near the top of the eye. Then we'll do a new layer with an even darker color to get right up here near the eyelid. From there, we'll grab our brown color. Make it a little bit bright. We don't need it to be super bright on this character since she's got brown eyes. But we're just trying to splash in a more vibrant looking brown color like that. And then what we can do is we can get a little hard shadow brush going. We'll put, maybe not that deep of splashes, but we'll put little splashes of orange in her eyes like this. Then we can soften them up a little bit. And we'll do that again, but this time with a bright yellow and just kind of something like this. We're just trying to add a little bit of pop of color to the eyes. From there, we can add in a multiply layer. And we'll just match the shadow that we have cast on the white portion of the eye. Like this. Soften it up a bit. Then finally, beneath that multiply layer, we'll add a color dodge layer. We'll go up to red, a very vibrant red. We'll make it a little bit darker, 150 here, and then with my little lighting brush, we'll do that. And then we'll pick a yellow for the other side, and I'll kind of bleed this yellow in over there as well. And then you can mess around with the vibrancy of it, but that will make the eyes pop a little bit more, so it gives them kind of an orangish hue there. Make that 80, and then you can mess around with the opacity on these eyes until they're about what you want. Because we still want her eyes to look relatively brown, but we still want to have some extra color pop to it, so I'll lower this down a little bit. And then what we could do is up above the line art for our eyeball, let's take a bright white, make it an add layer so it's super white, and then just throw in little things like this. So basically I'm coloring in with my hard brush, my hard shadow brush, make a little dot like this, and then I'm gently tapping outside of it to make the light kind of bleed over. So that way it kind of breaks up the eye and gives it a little bit of pop. So on this character, probably don't really need to add any real like lip gloss. What we could do though is just make the lips a little bit shiny maybe. So I'll just take a super light airbrush right here. Just sort of trace out where the lips would be, like so. And then soften that. Then make a new layer with a bright little spot here. It needs to be a little bit brighter than that. Oops. This to not be connected. That's why it didn't look bright before. Like that. Oops. Then I'll make a little multiply layer and add some. Oops. I need my G pen for this. Then I'll add a little bit of shadow to the mouth here. And again, if you wanted your character to have gloss, then you could do that. If you wanted to have lipstick, then you could add that in. For me, this just kind of feels like this character would look nice, just not really anything there. And we'll soften that up good. Get a little too much there. There we go. And then come back to here, and I'll lighten that up just a little bit more. Like so. So, there we go. Again, you can use whatever method you like for showing lighting on the hair. Truth be told, this method with just the streak is not one that I really personally like, so I don't really use it. You could mess around with making it like an add layer or adding a little pop of color to it. Like for example, see if we come down here and we come above that layer, we could come over here. Oops. We could add a new layer. We can make it a color dodge, and then you could add in like a kind of a dark blue hue to it, and that could make it look maybe a little bit better. Just so it has a little pop of color, you know, something like that. And they can mess with the value of that. That way it adds a little bit of something to it. Of course, but like I said, you can mess with it, make it your own, figure out what you want to do with it. It was just a different type of method that I felt like might be nice to see how it's done. Just so that way these tutorials aren't just the same thing, but slightly different, you know? But either way, hopefully you found this helpful for drawing your characters, and I will see you in the next one.